Hello everyone, welcome to Hydra Beginners tutorial series, and in this video I'm going to talk about the arrow functions and some variables that we can, like the Hydra offers, so we can use it in our functions. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to the Hydra functions page where, well, at this point we're familiar with it, and I'm going to just make myself a bit smaller. There we go. So we've looked into several, different categories, and based on that, I kind of framed the videos. Well, I skipped the source at first. We took a look at geometry, color, and then source, like noise, OSC kind of stuff, and blend to use two different sources or textures combined together. And the last one was the modulate that also combines it in a very unique way. And you saw some of the techniques I use. And now also there's external sources that are a bit like special functions, like s0.initCam, which is something I'm always using. Init image to load images, you have to upload first and then you can use images. Init video I skipped because instead I used init screen to load from other window. So those are the kind of families of functions, and the rest in this document is a little bit like a special ones. Well, external sources is also quite special ones. Since settings, maybe we already actually saw the render function, but also there are some other things that we haven't looked into. And for this, I think it's actually easier to, it's better to look into arrow functions first, and then we will look into the other ones. So what I mean is, I'm gonna just delete this, and as always, I will start with s0 initCam and use that as a source, like this. So now, again, stretched me, hello, and what I want to say is, okay, so for example, if we have Colorama, our favorite function, we can just evaluate as such. The default number is, I looked up this before, so it's actually 0.005. So if you don't type it in, it will just call it with 0.005. It's a number. And if you crank it up, then you see the effect a bit stronger. And there are other families of functions like blend or modulate. Which one? Modulate, maybe. It's more fun. The big difference is that modulate or blend functions, they take a texture or, source dot something something. So for example, OSC dot colorama or source s0 dot, I don't know, scroll. These functions or the textures go in to the first parameter, and there is no default parameter. That is very different, so you can't, actually I can just run it, but it will say typed arg.value is undefined, which is a little bit cryptic, but you see some error is happening at the bottom, and this is happening because I'm missing the function here, and there is no default one here. And if you remember, I like to have this smaller number here, and now you see that my deformed self is here. The second parameter can be omitted. It's 0.1 by default. If I want to make the visual effect a bit more humble, then I can make it a bit less, for example. But this I can skip because this is a number, and always in Hydra, if it's a number, then you can skip. There's an option to skip, and it will just take the default one. And today what I'm going to talk about, these arrow functions and arrays, they're only for the numbers. You cannot use that for textures. It's not you cannot combine this technique with this part, sadly. You have to do some kind of hacking if you want to do similar results. But basically what I'm going to do, so let's just go back to something simpler, Colorama, and let's say 0.1. Now, let's have a recap of what are the arrays. I didn't really emphasize this because I don't use it often, but it's probably really useful for you to do some kind of DJing and stuff, because this basically makes it things in a sequence. So if I evaluate it, it will switch from 0.1 to 0, 0.1 to 0. And it's 2-second interval because by default there's this hidden parameter that is BPM, which is by default it's set to 30, which I think is written here, right? If you go to synth settings, I always cannot pronounce this, BPM here. And I don't know if it says, yeah, it says the default is 30. And if it's 30, that means you clap every 2 seconds. So this change happens every 2 seconds. And if you say 60, then this switch between 0.1 and 0 becomes like a 1-second interval. And the array doesn't have to be, just 2 numbers. You can add more numbers, and you can also, repeat the same numbers if you want to have like 4 counts, and just for once you want 0.1, but the rest is 0. That's also possible. In this specific scenario with BPM 60, 0.1 will happen for 1 second and 0 for 3 seconds, and that repeats. But I will make it back to default so that I don't get confused. And by the way, there's another one called speed, and by default it's 1. And if you, so what's the, no, it's the same as BPM. If you multiply it by 2, then everything will be faster by like factor of 2. But speed also contributes to other things. So for example, we looked into like rotate or scroll X, Y that moves. And these ones are also affected by speed. And also OSC itself that scrolls. We can try. We can just say OSC out. And now it's actually faster if you compare to speed 1. So this is kind of more like a global thing. BPM is only for the arrays. So I know like with this combination, it gets a little bit confusing. So I actually prefer not to change this so much when I'm working. But that's up to you. So that's all I wanted to say is this arrays. And maybe it's a good time to introduce the array functions. I'm not talking about arrow functions I want to talk about, but let's see the array things first because it's more straightforward. So I just talked about BPM, but you can also independently change the speed of the array by dot fast. And I know it's quite confusing. You have this dot fast right after the array. So it seems a little bit awkward. I can add some spaces here. So this is the syntax, and fast has a default value of 1, so it will not change anything, and I will just keep it simple. So it will switch between 0.1 and 0 every 2 seconds because now it's the default BPM of 30. And if I say fast 2, then now it's 1 second interval because it's like this is a factor of multiplication factor for the speed of just this array. So if you have other array, for example, like scroll X and 0.5, which would mean that I would shift every 2 seconds. Now it's getting really confusing because this doesn't have the fast, or I can do fast 1, which doesn't do anything. So now I have like 2 different arrays, like sequencers with different intervals. And you can, you don't have to make it like natural number, right? So you can do like 0.5 or even like 0.3 or something if you want to achieve certain like mismatch of like tempo. That's also possible. It's up to you. And you can chain it with, for example, there is smooth. And I'm not really sure what this parameter is about, but let's say default parameter of 1. And probably scroll is a bit easier to understand, so I'll do scroll X without smooth first. So you understand this is, well, and I take fast also so that it's shifting from one to another position every 2 seconds. And now I do smooth 1, then now it's like smoothing between these positions or between these numbers. And if I say 0.1, it's a little bit like mechanical, but you see that there's like this kind of lerping or like interpolation happening, and you can like adjust the number. So if it's 0.3, then it's a little bit still like a mechanic, but kind of like this easing thing happening, and you can like pick your favorite number by tweaking it. Sometimes you want like more sharper movements. Sometimes you want it like really smooth. That's really depending on what you do. And again, you can like chain it with other ones, so it's faster and smooth, slightly smoother. So this, like, the order doesn't matter. You can go fast first and smooth fast. I don't think you can chain them in this way though. It will not mean, I think the last one will overwrite, so even if you do like 100, probably it will not change because only the last one takes into effect. So what if I do like minus 3.3? It's kind of weird, does like weird overshooting. So probably between 0 and 1 is good, but it's up to you. Next one is ease. This is very difficult one because it doesn't really say the options. But if you're already familiar with like this easing, and it's a weird function because it takes the string as an input. So maybe that's just, if you're curious, you can maybe search a little bit into the document. But basically, it's specifying the easing function using this kind of name, this easing in out cubic. So it's a little bit like similar to the smooth function with the parameter of the smoothing, but also this one you can do like ease in cubic. So only one part is sharp, only other part is smooth, kind of thing as well. Ease out cubic. I think there's like a quad and so on, but I'm not gonna like go too much into detail because then I have to like talk about this easing as well. But yeah, if you search for like easing, then probably you can find some information. And by the way, I don't really use them. So offset. Offset is a funny one because, well, I think this example explains it well. So if you have two different arrays, especially, you can use it with just one, but it's probably not really obvious because you want to have like offset in one of the arrays. So one of the array is kind of offset from the other one. The timing is changed. And I think what's happening here is, the good thing is I can just copy it and I just paste it here and I execute it. Now, what I'm gonna do is, offset. I think if I do offset of 1, it's the same, I think. So it's kind of the phase that goes from between 0 and 1. So like 0.5 is like a maximum offset. And if you go closer to 1, then it's kind of like started the one chasing and the one chased kind of flips. I don't know if it's... Anyways, you can try it. But if you have like two different arrays, this might be very helpful to have kind of like not everything moving all together, like scroll and colorama and rotate everything at once. But by offsetting different arrays, you can have this like effect a little bit like with different timing. And that's really, like, I don't know, for example, like not just scroll X, but I wanted to have this for color. Yeah, something like that. Well, actually, it's not really good idea because it's like minus, but something like this. So yeah, now the square's color is changing, but the color is not exactly the change of color is not exactly synchronized by this movement of a circle. It's kind of like weird, like Gestalt kind of experiment happening here now. Anyways, let's go back to my view, and that's the offset, this one, and there's fit. I actually don't know what fit is. It says low and high. It's somehow, actually I don't know. So I'm gonna just skip it. I don't really, I think it's fitting the whole range of numbers in between -2 and 0.2, because now here it has like number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like easier to understand for us. But if you do scroll x0, scroll x1, scroll x2, scroll x3, scroll x3, they're actually is the same, because it kind of like wraps around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's gonna be the same. So you won't actually scroll x 0.1, scroll x 0.2. But this fit automatically kind of like fits the range of numbers between -0.2 and 0.2. So it's quite handy in like this exact use case, I guess, because if I do it this way, so I just adapt it in my version that I'm going to be moving. And if I don't do fit, as I said, I think there is no movement, but we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the array, but scroll x0, scroll xy, scroll x1, scroll x2, they're all like kind of like wrapping, like arriving at the same place all the time. But if we do fit, and maybe I can do like, 0, 0.5 or something, just change it a little bit, then it kind of like mechanical movement, like gradually moving, and the minimum value of the array will be 0, the maximum value of the array will be 0.5. So I learned something, and it's quite useful to look at these examples here. So maybe like sometimes you want to have my example, but also you should go to this API page and check out the examples and try it out. That's a good way to learn also. Now, I want to cover another thing, which is arrow functions. And that sounds a little bit similar, but it's quite different. Now, what happens here is that, I don't know, like we have 0.1, for example. Now I'm slightly shifted. And what if I want to kind of dynamically change this number? So just like we have this BPM, this kind of special variables, we have, for example, time here. And, well, it actually gives already the answer to it, but it's a little bit cryptic, so I'll just do it here. So the way I use time is not this. If I do this, the time variable represents the seconds since I opened Hydra. So since you opened Hydra, it just increments automatically. Like Hydra takes care of like making this time goes by. And the thing is that if I evaluate it again and again and again, then you can see, okay, this is actually doing something. It's actually like, because it's scroll X, it should scroll, but it's not happening if you evaluate just once. What happens here is that if you evaluate, the time will be also evaluated, and if it's like, I don't know, 10 seconds, then it will just freeze like this, or if it's 10.001 seconds, it will just freeze there, and it will not update. And the way we update it is to use these arrow functions, which are like kind of functions. If you're familiar with like other programming languages or JavaScript, well, if you're familiar with JavaScript, probably you might know what it is about. But if you don't know, probably you know like function. This is like normal way of like defining functions. If you're using like processing, for example, like or Java, that's like void. But basically, you have something like this function, and there's always function name. There's parameters if you want to have input some parameters, just like OSC takes 3 different parameters. You can have here defining, and curly braces to kind of have what's inside, what the function does actually, what's the recipe of the function. And the simplest way is to have return statement where, for example, like I want to return time. So if you call this function, it will return time. And this, you can actually do the same thing in here. You can actually input a function Actually, I should try it. Would this work or not? It does work, and it's quite fast, so I'm gonna like multiply by 0.1. So what's nice about this is that now, actually, I'm not just like updating time, which is what I wanted to do, but also I can have this like mathematical equations or statements, or I don't know what it's called, operations inside here. So I can also like plus something or use some like, if you're fancy, you want to do like math function, like sine function, if you want to use it, or cosine and whatever, you can do something inside here. Because now we're kind of like going into the territory of like more conventional programming rather than like Hydra kind of way of programming. So it's kind of like now we're like mixing different kind of styles of programming, which I think is kind of funny. But there's like a big issue here is that this is really wordy. You don't want to have this like, you know, different functions like this. I would rather like keep it a bit shorter, and that's the way we achieve it, is to use these arrow functions or anonymous functions or lambda functions, depending on the language. But basically, it's the same thing. Well, now I updated it, so I'll just update this one as well. I just keep this as a kind of counterpart. Now, the way it works, it's actually not exactly the same. The disclaimer, I'm going to be like simplifying everything. So technically, what I'm going to do here is not the same as this at the bottom, but in Hydra, the way we use it, it's going to be almost the same. So we're not going to do like some object-oriented whatever thing, so it's fine. So one of this long part is this function. So we take this out. Well, not we take this out, but the way it works is instead we have this equal and greater than sign in between these parentheses and curly braces. And if I evaluate, I hope it's going to work. So this still works. If I change the number, it still works. It's great. So I took out this function thing, and that's great. And that's kind of like, these are like made for like as an inline function, which I think what you notice is that this f is not there anymore. It's because if you're defining a function like this, you want to call it somewhere, right? Like just like how we call like source or OSC, we call it somewhere else. But here, it just stays there and it's used here in place. So it doesn't even have a name. So it's an anonymous function. Anyways, it's still long. I mean, you can compress these new lines. It's also fine. I can do it like this, and semicolon, you don't need it always in JavaScript. So this is also okay, but it still feels long. And they offer something that if you don't have these curly braces, they will assume that this part is going to be returned. So it's a bit wild. This is a little bit wild. I know. I always feel this is really wild. If you compare, these examples, I'm just changed the numbers so that I know that it's still functioning as a function. So this is doing almost the same thing as what is written below, which is great because now it's really like compact and it's really good for live coding because you don't want to write a lot of code like function, return, this and that. You can really focus on, okay, the script, this is the cryptic part, but then if you're done with this cryptic sequence, I can just say, okay, time 3.1, that's what I want. Boom. So this is like really good. Like it goes like really nice with Hydra way of writing code. And I'm gonna just like delete this part. But also like, actually I didn't I didn't say it, but scroll X offers the second parameter, so you don't need to do this crazy thing. You can actually just say 0, 0.1. Well, it doesn't change anything because it's doing the same thing. But in the case of scroll X, yes, you have an option to do it. Maybe with a rotate, you can do it. But for example, like if you wanted to have like just like I did math.sine, which is a sine function, sine function, not a sine, it's not arcsine, it's a sine function. Or cosine function you can use. Cosine is cos. And this is not something easily doable in just with Hydra function. You actually can with modulate and crazy things that you can read Hydra book. But it's more intuitive, I think. This is like a bit more like a processing P5JS kind of type of way of coding. But you can like mix, you can really like mix these tricks inside Hydra, which is like really strong, I think. We have not just time, but for example, what if I want to use some kind of interactivity? Like if you do like mouse is always comes with a dot, either X or Y. Well, let's say X, or I mean Y, it's also fine. Let's say Y then. Then if I evaluate this, then now everything is reacting. Well, now I'm like slowly moving it upwards, slowly moving it downwards. It's going like waviness, reacting to my mouse movement. And this can be like a nice way to, like make really simple fader. Why is it like going really crazy? Because mouse Y is not scaled from 0 to 1, just like other functions like scroll X and Y, they always like map to 0 and 1, between 0 and 1. Mouse X is actual pixels, so it's kind of quite big. If you want to scale it to 0 to 1, then there is height. It's another variable, just like time. There's also width. So if I do this, then the whole mouse.y is okay. Now I should take this away. And if I want to have like a perfect cycle, then I have to say math.pi. But for example, like 3.04, I talked about this in the radian whatever thing with the rotate, right? So now if I scroll my cursor from the top, I'm just like following with my finger. Well, but my finger is actually moving because of the scroll X. Yeah, it's basically doing like this movement. Actually, not all the way because it's just not the one cycle, but half of a cycle because it's 3.14. I have to double it if I want to go to the one side and another. Anyways, but you get the idea. So that you can make some interactivity as well. Just like a tiny note, this height variable and width variable is also available. Then I should change to X now. It's interacting with the horizontal movement. And what did I want to say? These variables kind of like freeze when you reload or open Hydra page. So if you rescale it, the window afterwards, it might not match. So then you probably want to like just refresh the page after you save the code, or you can use inner width, which is almost the same, but it's updated by the browser. So if you scale the window size, then it will still match the new width. But sometimes you just want to keep it easy. I know that I'm not going to resize it, so I just use width, for example. So now actually the good thing is, thanks to this arrow function, I talked about mouse, time, height, width, and now we already know BPM, speed. So that's almost it. I'm going to just like wrap up with a few more functions. For example, render, we talked about it already. So I'm not gonna skip it. And update, I'll briefly tell you what update is. So update is, you can input something to update, but update is not a number. Surprise. Update is a function. So you actually input a function like this. And so this is like really getting like a P5JS, just like how you have draw function, we have update function, because draw is, Hydra is drawing anyways. So if you input a function to update, this will be like evaluated every frame. And for example, this is useful if you have a variable like, I don't know, t equals 0. don't use let because it has this like weird scoping thingy. Maybe var is okay, but I normally just don't put anything here because if you do let and if you, okay, I can try it. You know, for example, I'm not going to explain like what I'm doing. Well, that sounds that sounds weird, but I'm not going to like go into like details of the, you know, like technical stuff of the coding. But basically, I'm incrementing t variable every frame. This is given by Hydra, so update it will be like called every frame, I think, and every time it will increment t by 0.1. So if you use, for example, inside scroll x, I do t again. You know, this is not what you want to do. You have to do this because if you evaluate, t will be like frozen. So if you want t to be updated, you have to do it like this. Now I'm going to run this. It will work for the first one. Okay, it's too fast. But now if I do like, okay, I'll just slow it down and I will evaluate everything. It will not, okay, it did work. Okay, then it's fine. But sometimes let does weird things. So it's not like a JavaScript convention, but you can use these variables without defining with let or var, or well, you probably don't want const. I'll slow it down. Okay, so maybe something like 0.001 is good. Anyways, so this kind of thing is possible. But again, you know, what I'm doing now, you can actually use time to do a similar thing, right? Because if you do time times, I don't know, 0.0 something, it's also the same thing. So it's for a demonstration. But sometimes, you know, you want to do some kind of update to do something non-linearly adding incrementing things, or I don't know, if you have like other libraries loaded, maybe you need to update something. So this is useful in some cases, but I don't really think it's very important for now. And set resolution, that's very important. There was actually a comment on set resolution. I mean, not that they asked about set resolution, but how can we, for example, generate high resolution image? The funny thing is that if you do Ctrl-Shift-S, you can download the code and the image, and this resolution is set when you open the Hydra page or the Hydra instance. Just like how I told you about width and height, that the number freezes, so even if you scale the window, it will remain the same, which is kind of counterintuitive. But you can actually arbitrarily set the resolution of the window without scaling it by calling set resolution. So for example, if I do, I don't know, 800 by 800, then it will not change. Oops. Oh, because of this weird t thingy, maybe. Weird t. 0.5 maybe, just as a demo. So if you do this, we don't see much change in the result. It's actually changing. We'll see in a second. But if you download with Ctrl-Shift-S, what happens here is that, oopsie, here we go, that the image is actually square. It's actually 800 by 800. So the canvas is now 800 by 800, but you don't see it because it's actually like it's mapped to the screen, so you don't actually see that it's actually stretched from 800 to 800. But if you save it, you see the difference. So this makes it, you know, easier for you to make high resolution image. For example, like I want square but like high resolution, like 1800 by 1800, then you can just do it like this. Don't make it too big because probably the browser cannot handle it. If you have strong graphics card, maybe you can crank it up a little bit, you know, like towards like 4000 or something. But yeah, this is the way. But if you go like way more than that, probably you want to like think about other solutions, like rendering just part of the image and do it like 4 times or something. But yeah, basically this is a way to make high resolution image, which in this exact case it doesn't really matter because it's kind of capped by the resolution of the webcam. But for example, if you want to have like a beautiful image of OSC, like this, you can set resolution like really high, and you can have really high resolution OSC downloaded. So that's very exciting. I don't know if it's exciting to you, but that's the way to do it. To make it, of course, like you can make it like frame by frame and render it later to make like a high resolution video. I tried it before, but it gets like becomes like a like problem with like capped by the browser's capability. So I didn't really have success. But if someone's really curious, maybe we can have exchange about the information about making it like frame by frame, rendering video and whatever. Okay, so that's set resolution. Set resolution is sometimes like quite useful. Or if you want to have full HD, of course, you can set it like this as well and have full HD image rendered if you download it. Also, the funny thing is that you can also make it super small, and what happens is that the whole canvas now is 1 by 1. So now you actually change the whole like image, right? You can do like 10 by 10, for example. That makes it like real like pixelated, because the canvas, what it's rendering is only 10 by 10. So it's when it's mapped to the window, of course it has to be stretched, and it's pixelated. So you can actually do pixelation without a pixelate function. And if you download this image, you get like 10 pixel by 10 pixel PNG, which is kind of cute. Also, something small, you can still see, pixelated image. What if you don't really like want to like make it default? I don't know. Well, I don't know. I just delete it, evaluate all, reload the page, then voila. Okay, so maybe the last one is Hush. Set function, I will skip it because this is like getting really nerdy. You can read Hydra book about it, but you have to know how to write GLSL, and it's really confusing. So it's beyond the scope of this one. Okay, so the Hush is basically, it's just this. I think it came from tidal cycles. In tidal cycles, it will just stop all the sound, and just like that, in Hydra, Hush will just clear all the buffers, and it will not render anything anymore. So that's the end of this tutorial. It's basically the same as like pressing this trash can. I don't use it so much because there's trash can. But in a performance, maybe it's actually nice to end it like this. Who knows? So thank you for watching, and if you find this video helpful, please hit the like button. And what else? Please subscribe. And again, if you have questions, I saw that some of you write in the comments down below. That's perfect. If I have time, I will check them out. And if it's something easy to answer, I will write it directly, or I might kind of talk about it in the next videos. So I definitely want to, I'm definitely reading them, and I really appreciate them. So please write in the comments, or I put my email address on the bio, so you can reach out to me, or you can find like a Facebook group, Discord group, where you can ask questions. And it's always nice to share what you make and get inspired by each other. So please do it. So I will see you in the next video. I don't know what I left off. Okay, maybe audio activity, and that's kind of the everything in the function page. I still promised you, or like talked about the feedback stuff, so that may be coming up in the next videos. So until the next time, have a great day, and I hope this video is helpful for you. Thanks for watching.